Hello, everyone, and welcome into Coach Craig Sports. This is the NFL DFS core, or I shouldn't even say core pick video, kind of breakdown for week number 2. I did not, unfortunately, make a video for week number 1. Was feeling under the weather at that point in time. But for this series, what I'll kind of be doing for this year, we're going to go through each game on the main slate, kind of talk about the players that I'd be most interested in playing, kind of some stacks, everything else like that. Maybe a little bit if I'll be overweight or underweight to the field, just kind of based on the expected ownership. If you guys have any additional questions, feel free to drop them down in the chat if you're watching live. If you're watching on replay, leave them down in the comments. I'd be more than happy to help you down there as well. Be sure to check out my cheat sheet. It is 100% free. It's up on the Sports Affiliation website. So there is one for the main slate for both DraftKings and FanDuel. We're going to be going through DraftKings first, then I'll go over to FanDuel, kind of just talking through the slate in general. So we're going to get started, like I said, on DraftKings side. I do apologize, a couple minutes late today. It was lagging a little bit for my computer, so hopefully that's okay for the stream. We're going to look at this first game with Green Bay and Atlanta, just kind of breaking down it. I'm not super interested in the quarterbacks in this game, if I'm being completely honest. If you really want to take a stab on Jordan Love, you could do it, but not really too interested in him or Desmond Ridder. Obviously, running backs, there's going to be some value in this game. Bijan Robinson, very highly used week 1, was used a lot in the receiving game. Tyler Algier was kind of the surprise at $5,500, getting 2 touchdowns last week. So both of them are going to be in play, probably ultimately be about even with the field on them. For Green Bay, Aaron Jones is dealing with a hamstring injury. He did not practice all week, so he'll kind of be up in the air whether or not he plays, listed as questionable at this point in time. If he plays, I still have some interest in him. Don't mind him at $6,600. Obviously, if he doesn't play, A.J. Dillon's probably going to ultimately become somewhat of a chalk play. I'm not super high on him myself personally, so he's really going to need to get those touchdowns. So probably be a guy that I'll ultimately be underweight to the field on. For wide receivers, Christian Watson didn't practice the first 2 days this week and then was limited on Friday, probably out once again this week. Romeo Doubs does have a clean bill of health, but still probably limited, although he did put up a pretty good fantasy performance last week, but could see a lot of AJ Terrell in this matchup. So I'm not super interested in him. Not really too high on any of these wide receivers in this matchup overall. So for the most part, not really getting into too much in this game. For like tight end perspective, though, Kyle Pitts, there is some opportunities to be had there. Quay Walker could ultimately end up missing this game, so that could make him look a little bit better. Luke Musgrave is a little bit interesting at $3,200. And then, if you want to do like a punt play, Jonnu Smith, there is some opportunities to be had there. Maybe he gets a touchdown, but not really too much here. Probably Luke Musgrave would be the one that I'd be the most interested in. And then primarily from this game, I really just want to get to the defenses. So whether it's the Packers or the Falcons defense, I prefer the Falcons defense, though. They had that really strong week number 1. And then going against the Packers, a little bit banged up at this point in time. They could be without David Bakhtiari at left tackle as well, so that could really help out that Falcons defense. From Packers' perspective, they got a pretty decent defense, but if they can't stop the run against Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier, it's going to be a really long week for them. So mainly get into the defenses for this matchup, maybe a little bit of Luke Musgrave, maybe Aaron Jones if he ends up playing, and then those running backs for Atlanta. So that's mainly where I'd be looking at in that game overall. So we'll get over to the next one, which is Las Vegas and Buffalo. Very interested in Josh Allen this week, $7,900. He is kind of like my high-end play, especially for the cheat sheet. Probably ultimately be overweight to the field on him. Jimmy Garoppolo, probably not really getting to this week overall. For the running back perspective, Josh Jacobs, he's kind of like a play that's out there if you really wanted to play him, but I'm not really getting to him too much myself. James Cook, I do have quite a bit of interest in, though, at $6,100. Pretty fair value there. Led the running back department for Buffalo in week number 1. Expect the same in week 2. I really have a lot of interest in this Buffalo team overall. They're one of my favorite top stacks for this week. And with that being said, I do have a lot of interest in Stephon Diggs, probably be overweight to the field on him once again. Gabe Davis, probably have a good amount of him too as well at $5,800. Kind of mix and matching those guys back and forth with my Josh Allen stacks. Not really too interested in any of the other Buffalo Bills wide receivers since they didn't really use a true wide receiver 3 in week 1. They used a lot of 2 tight end sets, which ultimately helped out Dalton Kincaid. For the Las Vegas Raiders, if you want to play Devontae Adams, it's fine. It's not anybody that I'm going out of my way for this week. Jacoby Myers is out, so Hunter Renfrow does have a little bit of interest there at $3,900. Kind of a punt play if you want to go there. It is a tougher matchup against Teron Johnson, though, for the Buffalo Bills, who is a pretty good slot corner. So there's probably going to be somebody else that ultimately pans out a little bit for Las Vegas. We'll see if they play Hunter Renfrow and Devontae Adams as the 2 wide receiver sets, or who ultimately kind of fills in on that outside. So if we look at the Las Vegas depth chart here real quick, since I do have this kind of up. We'll move down. So you're probably looking at like Wilkerson on the outside, which not anybody I'm excited to. Trey Tucker was inactive week 1. DeAndre Carter's there. He's been banged up, though. More of a punt and kick returner, not as opposed to a guy that you want to play traditionally on the outside. So not too much there. It's probably going to be a lot of Devontae Adams, probably going to be a lot of Jacoby Myers. Maybe they use more 2 tight ends set in week 2 with, the rookie Michael Mayer and Austin Hooper. So maybe one of those is a little bit more interesting this week. I don't have any problem going to Dawson Knox or Dalton Kincaid. I think both are going to be kind of interesting plays, especially if you want to get off of some of that ownership with Josh Allen stacked up with Stephon Diggs. Definitely a reasonable way to get around that. And then from the defensive side, not really interested in not really interested in the Raiders this week against Buffalo. I think it's a big bounce back week for Buffalo overall. If you want to play the Bills, you probably could, but they're just kind of a middle pack team for me in terms of DST this week. So we're going to get off this one. We'll go over to the next game, which is the Baltimore Ravens and the Cincinnati Bengals. Do have a decent amount of interest in both quarterbacks, Lamar Jackson and Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow would be my favorite one on DraftKings. On FanDuel, though, we'll get there, but Lamar Jackson is cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, which is just kind of crazy in my personal opinion. But do have quite a bit of interest in both quarterbacks in a bounce back spot this week. For Joe Mixon, definitely have some interest in him on both sides. That is going to be some, he's kind of the middle pack, if you just kind of end up with that amount of money, he's a decent filler there. And then obviously Baltimore running back situation. There is no J.K. Dobbins now at this point in time. Do have a decent amount of interest in Gus Edwards. I know Justice Hill scored the touchdown last week, so probably a lot of people would be going to him, but I'd prefer to go to Gus Edwards. Probably overweights the field on Gus Edwards. Probably not getting to Justice Hill this week. Melvin Gordon's probably going to be up, so could be an interesting backfield split there. I have a good amount of interest in both Cincinnati wide receivers and Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. For Baltimore, I have a little bit of interest in Zay Flowers, but if I had to pick a wide receiver, it's probably going to be Odell Beckham Jr. this week. I do like him a lot on FanDuel, where he has a pretty attractive price of $5,300 there. But $4,700 on DraftKings is a very reasonable one, too. Him and Zay Flowers both played ahead of Rashad Bateman, so it's really hard to get to Bateman this week. They do get Mark Andrews most likely back. He was able to practice on Friday in full. So he's going to be pretty interesting. I do like the matchup for him overall. And then, Irv Smith, if you wanted to get there, it's more of a pump play than anything. But Mark Andrews, have a little bit of exposure to Odell Beckham. I'll have good exposure to both Cincinnati wide receivers and both quarterbacks in this matchup. In terms of defense, not really getting there too much this week. And for this matchup, they're just kind of middle of the pack ones for me overall. So we'll get over to the next game, which is the Seattle Seahawks and the Detroit Lions. So I have interest in both quarterbacks in Jared Goff and Geno Smith. I'd probably prefer to play Jared Goff after week 1, but could be without Taylor Decker at tackle this week. We'll see if they move Penei Sewell over to the left side or if they just fill in with one of the replacements, probably Matt Nelson. And then at running back, Jahmyr Gibbs is kind of interesting. I would prefer him a little bit more on FanDuel, where he does have the cheaper price tag. David Montgomery does have some interest as well at $5,800. And Kenneth Walker, both Kenneth Walker and David Montgomery at $5,800 is going to be pretty appealing, since both these teams are not the greatest at stopping the run going back to last season. And then we're going over to wide receivers, especially if Devon Witherspoon does not ultimately end up playing. DK Metcalf's going to look pretty good. Tyler Lockett's going to look pretty good. I don't have to say too much there. Josh Reynolds is a pretty interesting punt play at $3,700, since he is really attractive with that price tag overall. Not much else to be had there. Sam Laporta, if you want to play him at $3,900, does make some sense. Noah Fant could be an interesting punt play, although, it's kind of been him, Will Disley, and Colby Parkinson all kind of splitting up the snaps at tight end for the most part last season towards the end of the year and in week number 1 as well. In terms of the defense, not really in there too much. We don't have too much of a favor for these defenses overall. We'll get over to the next game with the Colts and the Texans. So CJ Stroud on Friday with the left shoulder injury listed as questionable at this point in time. Colts defense all the way still looks pretty good for the Colts defense, even with CJ Stroud. Anthony Richardson could be interesting just due to his rushing upside, but do like the Texans defense quite a bit. In terms of running backs, if you want to play Dameon Pierce, I don't hate it at $5,600. I think I like him a little bit better on FanDuel, though. And then Zach Moss at $4,700 could be a very interesting play if he gets the nod as the running back 1 this week for the Colts in his first game back. For the wide getting too much here. I think Tagdale is going to be a very interesting punt play at $3,200. We'll see if whether or not John Mechie plays this week. Josh Downs could be another interesting punt play. Played a lot in week number 1 at $3,400. And then, Nico Collins, Robert Woods, they're just kind of there, filler options. Same thing with Michael Pittman, who I think is a little bit too expensive at this point in time with the rookie quarterback. For the tight ends, I like Dalton Schultz a little bit this week, so he would be somebody that I'd be fine playing as kind of a mid-range tight end, and then everybody else is just kind of a punt play. And then both these defenses very much in play this week. Definitely have a good amount of exposure to both sides for that defense. We move over to Kansas City and Jacksonville at this point in time. So we have Patrick Mahomes. I will have, a little bit of exposure to him. I'm nothing too crazy. Probably underweight to the field this week, honestly. I think Jacksonville's defense is competent enough. We don't know whether or not Travis Kelce is going to play or not. He's listed as questionable at this point in time. Do assume that he does end up playing, but there's still some question marks with this Kansas City offense. Trevor Lawrence, if you want to play him at $6,700, you just kind of find middle of the road play there. Not really getting into running backs in this matchup overall. I don't really trust the Kansas City backfield at this point in time. Some people do really like Travis Etienne, but I'm not crazy about him in this matchup overall. For the wide receivers, Calvin Ridley's all the way up to $7,200 now. If you want to play him, that's definitely fine. Christian Kirk didn't play a lot week 1. I was Zay Jones and Calvin Ridley both ahead of him, so I like Zay Jones a decent amount at $4,700. He's definitely in a mix with a lot of guys there. And then for Kansas City, it's just kind of take your stab on the guy you want to play. Rashid Rice maybe as a punt play if you want to go that direction. Sky Moore on the bounce back with probably very, very little ownership could make some sense as well. For the tight ends, I think both of them are going to very much be in play. Travis Kelce, if he obviously ends up playing, is going to look pretty good. And then Evan Ingram, he's been pretty solid since he's been in Jacksonville. So don't have a problem playing either one of them this week. If I'm playing and I'm stacking, a lot of people are going to stack Mahomes and Kelce together. If you want to get a little bit different in this game, maybe you go to Trevor Lawrence and Zay Jones together. In terms of defense, not too much here. They're just kind of middle of the road plays for me overall. We'll get over to the next game, which is the Bears and the Buccaneers, which is going to be another interesting game. We'll even start with the defenses because I think both these defenses are very much in play. If they can get some turnovers versus these quarterbacks in Justin Fields and Baker Mayfield, could be a pretty interesting game overall. So probably be a little bit overweight to the field on both them. In terms of the quarterbacks, I don't mind playing both quarterbacks either. But obviously, if you're playing the opposing defense, you're probably not going to play the quarterback against them. Justin Fields, he does have that rushing upside, but $7,600 is a little bit more than I like to pay for him. Don't hate Baker Mayfield at $5,100. Bears secondary a little bit banged up at this point in time. Kyler Gordon in the slot. He's going to be out for a couple of weeks. His replacement was supposed to be Josh Blackwell, and he's out now too. So they're kind of down to like their third string nickel back. So it could be interesting to see how that pans out for them. In terms of the running backs, have a little bit of interest in Rachaad White, especially with the receiving profile. Bears running backs, you could take a stab at a couple of different ones if you really wanted to. Khalil Herbert or Roschon Johnson most likely, but not really trying to get there this week overall. It's a tougher matchup against Tampa Bay, who's usually been pretty good against the run as well. Mike Evans, I think he's going to have the tougher assignment going against Jalen Johnson at cornerback, so that should mean that Chris Godwin, they used a lot of 2 wide receiver sets week 1. But when Godwin lines up in the slot, he's going to be going against the third stringer, so it's going to be pretty attractive matchup for him. So that would be where I would be trying to get to for the Tampa Bay side. Trey Palmer's also a punt play at $3,400. And then on the Bears side, I don't mind DJ Moore. It's a little bit tougher matchup. Probably going to get Jamel Dean most of the day. But if he gets moved around and put on the other side, could be pretty interesting since there is no Carlton Davis for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And Darnell Mooney is a guy that I do like getting to quite a bit. Probably going to be lining up in the slot once again, going against Christian Eisen, who did have a really good week 1, but he still is an undrafted rookie. So probably a little bit overweight to the field on Darnell Mooney overall, overweight to the field on Chris Godwin, and then everybody else, just either in line with the field or not getting to it all this week. For the tight end position, Cole Kmet, Cade Otton, they're just kind of fillers at this point in time. I think Kmet's a little bit too expensive. Cade Otton, I get the option to get there if you really wanted to at $3,100, kind of a cheaper pay down option. And then, like I said, the defense is both very much in play this week overall. We'll get over to the Chargers and the Titans. Looks like we clicked off the Chargers there real quick, so do apologize for that. Justin Herbert's going to be a fine play. Tennessee is a little bit banged up in the secondary too. Amani Hooker's not playing this week. Christian Fulton's not playing this week, so it could be an advantageous spot for Justin Herbert and company. Not really getting to Ryan Tannehill, even though he's pretty cheap at this point in time. Doesn't look like Austin Eckler is going to play. Joshua Kelly as $5,000. I think a lot of people are going to be on him this week. It might pan out, it might not, honestly. So kind of take that risk at your own. If you're playing 10 different lineups, maybe you throw them in 4 of those lineups and see if it pays off or not, and then kind of get a little bit contrarian in the other 6. But if you're playing him, he's probably going to end up being pretty chalky. And at the same time, you're going to want some other guys that aren't drawing quite as much ownership. Let's see. Kind of a sneaky one, though. Elijah Dotson could be sneaky at $4,000 if he gets the passing game work with Joshua Kelly, with Austin Eckler out. Kind of a punt play there at running back if you really want to go that direction. But I do like Derrick Henry quite a bit in this matchup, $7,400. He has that really strong upside, and the Chargers have that long history of not being able to stop the run. And they're going to be without linebacker Eric Kendricks this week, who is listed as doubtful as well. And then his potential replacement would have been Dion Henley, but he's also listed as doubtful. So probably seeing Kenneth Murray line up there alongside like Nick Neiman or Iman Abudango or something like that. I can't pronounce his last name off the top of my head. But either way, you're looking at probably a 3rd-string linebacker lining up next to Kenneth Murray. And Kenneth Murray is not good at stopping the run either. So it could be a pretty big game for Derrick Henry overall. So getting overweight to the field on him this week on both sites. For wide receiver, could be an interesting matchup for Keenan Allen. I don't like this $7,100 price tag, though. Mike Williams at $5,700. It's not a bad price tag whatsoever. We did see Quentin Johnson not play very much week 1. Josh Palmer was still ahead of him. The big thing here for the Titans is going to be DeAndre Hopkins, whether he plays or not. He didn't practice all week. He's at $6,700, listed as questionable. So, if he does ultimately end up playing, that's a way that you can get a little bit different on ownership. But I think it's going to be a lot of Derrick Henry this week. If you really want to take a shot on like Treylon Burks or Nick Westbrook-Ikhine, you could do it, but I'm not getting there myself personally. Mainly for the Titans, I'm getting a Chig Okonkwo at $3,300, especially if DeAndre Hopkins does not play. Coming off of goose egg in week number 1. But still played like 80% of the snaps. So not very concerned there. And I don't mind Gerald Everett for the Chargers as well. Should be a pretty good matchup for him in terms of the guys he'll be going up against in the linebackers for Tennessee. And then on the back end, not really interested in either of these 2 defenses at this point in time. And then we're going to get over to the Giants and the Cardinals. So for the quarterbacks, I don't mind Daniel Jones at $6,000. I think he's a little bit better priced on FanDuel, but he's out there. Arizona has not got a good defense at this point in time. These secondary for them is very young, very inexperienced at this point in time, outside of Budda Baker, who is listed as questionable as well at this point in time. So it could be a very favorable matchup for Daniel Jones. It does offer a little bit of rushing upside. And, there's not that much of a pass rush for Arizona, so should be all right even with a banged-up offensive line for the Giants. Really do like Saquon Barkley at $8,000. He's going to look really good on both sites. A lot of people do like James Conner this week. I'm not there on board at this point, so I'll be underweight to him for sure. Nothing too else much here to say for running backs. Wide receivers, if you're playing Daniel Jones, you're probably going to want to stack a wide receiver or Darren Waller alongside him. Isaiah Hodgins makes some sense. Slayton did play a lot week 1, and so did Paris Campbell. But, Paris Campbell more of a dart throw at $3,500. For Arizona, I'm not really getting to much here. There's Michael Wilson, who did play a lot week 1. He could be another dart throw if you wanted to go that direction. So that's kind of where I'm at in terms of wide receivers there. Not the greatest wide receiver matchup. I do have some interest in Darren Waller at $5,500. Looks to be healthy at this point in time. Should be a pretty good matchup for him versus Arizona. Although Kaiser White's a decent coverage linebacker. So we'll just keep that in mind. But, Darren Waller's still more of a wide receiver than a tight end more times than not. And then really not interested in the Arizona tight ends. You could play either defense in this matchup if you really wanted to, but the Giants are going to be my favorite at $3,800. Be a little bit overweight to the field on them, stacking them alongside Saquon Barkley more often than not. Then we get over to the Rams and the 49ers. So I think both quarterbacks are actually going to be in play in this matchup. Both defensive backs units are not the greatest at this point in time. So there is some question marks there on both sides. Brock Purdy's played really well in the starts that he's made so far in his young career and had another 2-touchdown game last week. $5,700 looks pretty good there. And then Matthew Stafford had that really good game against Seattle last week. $5,600 does offer some upside as well, as long as that Rams offensive line can stop Nick Bosa and company. Because if they can do that, it's going to be a pretty good day for the Rams passing unit overall, I should say. Then Christian McCaffrey, he's going to be a play once again. Looks like a pretty good matchup versus the Rams. And then we saw Cam Akers take a backseat to Kyren Williams last week. So if you want to take a shot on Kyren Williams at $5,000, especially if this goes into a negative game script, could be a pretty good one for him overall. At wide receiver, Brandon Ayuk still going to be very interesting. Deebo Samuel was also very interesting. Both those are probably too cheap at this point in time. Puka Nacua did have that big week number one, dealing with an oblique injury, but supposedly good to go this week. Tutu Atwell had another big week one. But, I think a lot of people are going to be on Puka Nacua and Tutu Atwell. So I think getting to Van Jefferson is a very good leverage play this week, which is something that a lot of people were on last week, probably got burned by, and now looking for that bounce back, especially if Puka's drawn a little bit more attention and coverage. So I think if you can get deep down the field with Van Jefferson, it's going to ultimately end up paying pretty well off. So if you want to stack him and Matthew Stafford together, makes some sense. I like the matchup for George Kittle. It's pretty favorable there. Looks to be healthy at this point in time. And then Tyler Higbee should be drawing some targets once again, $4,600. One of the better mid-range options this week. And then in terms of defense, I don't hate either one of these. You could probably play either one. There is spots that could be advantageous for them, but, not going out of my way to play either one at this point in time. Moving over to the Jets and the Cowboys. So Dak Prescott, it's a tougher matchup against the Jets, so probably not getting there this week overall. Aaron Rodgers, obviously on IR, probably done for the season with his Achilles tear. After we got Zach Wilson, he's $4,900, which is cheap, but this is a terrible matchup versus Dallas. So really expecting much there. At running back, I'm not really super interested in any of these guys. I'm not high on Tony Pollard this week at $7,500 versus this Jets defense, which I think is pretty good. Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall kind of split last week with a little bit of Michael Carter here and there. So, if I'm playing one of these guys, it's probably Breece Hall, but I'm still probably not getting there this week overall. In terms of the wide receivers, I do like CeeDee Lamb, though. He is probably going to line up in the slot, although Brandon Cooks could miss this week. We'll see who ultimately ends up playing on the outside, whether it's Jalen Tolbert and 3 wide receiver sets or somebody else. But Cooks is listed as questionable, although he has not practiced all week. He's got an MCL sprain, so I doubt that he plays. I do like CeeDee Lamb, especially lining up in the slot against Michael Carter II. For Garrett Wilson, $7,500 is way too much for him with Zach Wilson at quarterback, so I don't really like that. Michael Gallup at $4,200, a little bit appealing, though, with Brandon Cooks probably out. There is some upside that could be had there, although it is a really tough matchup versus Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed, depending on where he ultimately ends up lining up for the most part. So not really too much there. Tolbert could be kind of a punt play if you really wanted to go there, but I'm just not a big fan of Jalen Tolbert. Then we get over to tight end. Not really interested in Jets tight ends. Jake Ferguson, you can take a shot on at $3,300. It's an okay matchup. So if you really want to punt play there, you could do that. We'll move over to Washington and Denver now at this point in time. And I think this is the last game on the main slate. Let me just double check that. Feels like we've been going for a while, but it also feels like we haven't at the same time. So with Washington and Denver, it's going to be a pretty interesting matchup as well. I think this could be an interesting game. So both these defenses are probably going to be pretty good. So I'm not too interested in quarterback at this point in time. For the running back perspective, I have some interest in Javonte Williams. He's only $5,600. Brian Robinson got the bulk load in week number 1. So $5,200 could be somebody that you just throw in as a filler if you want to go there. Wide receivers, Jerry Jeudy's back this week. $6,600 is way too much money for him. Probably going against Benjamin St-Juste in the slot. Not the greatest matchup either. And then, Terry McLaurin, if you want to take a shot on one of the Washington wide receivers, like Terry McLaurin or Jahan Dotson, they're not badly priced. Curtis Samuel's only $4,000, but he is banged up with a hip injury, although he's going to play. And then we saw Marvin Mims not really do too much week 1. And then LaJordan Humphrey did score a touchdown, but not going to talk too much about him. For wide receiver, for tight ends, Greg Dulcich is out this week. So Adam Troutman will be pretty much the only tight end that matters for Denver this week. So if you want to take a shot on him at $3,000, could pay off. Maybe it doesn't. Logan Thomas, just kind of a filler at $3,100 if you want to get there. And then in terms of defenses, I think you could play either one of these defenses this week, and it could ultimately pay off in a good way. So that's kind of where we're at for DraftKings. I'm going to try to pull up FanDuel as well, and then we'll kind of go quickly through that as well. But if you guys have any specific questions related to NFL DFS, be sure to drop them down in the live chat or down in the comments if you're watching on replay, and be more than happy to help you over there. Like I said before, also be sure to check out the cheat sheet up on the sports affiliation website. That is up on my Craig Sport. And then if you're interested in my player pool for the week, be sure to check out Patreon at patreon.com/Coach Greg Sport. And then as all this stuff up. Your betting needs for college football, for NFL, for MLB, anything down in the description below. There's for you can best maximize the first time that you do ultimately end up signing up for those websites. So I am just pulling up FanDuel at this point in time. I'm going to take this off the screen and we'll get FanDuel brought up here. So FanDuel, for the most part, things are going to be pretty similar. Not sure why there's like a preloaded lineup in here already, but that was not a good lineup either. I am going to go through, let's see if we can do games real quick. So we're going to start off with Baltimore and Cincinnati. That's the first one that pops up. Jamar Chase still very much in play. Same thing with, pretty much similar to what we had on the DraftKings side. Then one major change from this game is that Lamar Jackson is only $7,600. He is cheaper on FanDuel than he is on DraftKings, and we should take advantage of that this week. Whether it pans out or not remains to be seen, but it is something that we should definitely take advantage of. Probably going to be a cash game play on the FanDuel side. I still like Joe Mixon very much. You can go to Joe Burrow at $7,400. Not a bad price tag there. T. Higgins very much in play. Not really buying Zay Flowers at $6,600 on FanDuel, though. Let's see where we're at, too, as well. Just keep moving down here. So Gus Edwards, $5,900. Do like him still on this set over Justice Hill. Still not getting Rashad Bateman. Odell Beckham Jr., like I said, at $5,300, I like him quite a bit. So pairing him and Lamar Jackson together makes some sense to me. If you want to pair Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews together, you definitely do have the salary to do that, although Mark Andrews is $8,000 on FanDuel. Let's see where else we're at. So Baltimore Ravens defense, $4,600. Really not getting to either one of these defenses once again, though. So let's see. I'm ahead of myself here, so I do apologize for that. We do have position is going to make it a little bit easier. So we got Seattle, Detroit, quarterback. I still think both these guys are very much in play. $7,300, $7,000. Very good price tags this week overall. At running back, Kenneth Walker is my favorite at $6,700, but I do like it taking advantage of Jahmyr Gibbs at $5,800 on the FanDuel side. That's one major difference between FanDuel and DraftKings. And then at wide receiver, still like Amon-Ra St. Brown quite a bit. DK Metcalf looks pretty good. Tyler Lockett looks pretty good. Josh Reynolds, not quite the value that he is over on DraftKings, where he looks like a pretty good punt play. Probably not getting to him on the FanDuel side. And then at tight end, Sam Laporta is all right at $5,100. If you want to punt play one of the Seattle tight ends, you could do that as well. And then not really getting to either one of these defenses at this point in time. We're going to get over to the Raiders and the Bills. Still very much like the Bills overall. Josh Allen at $9,200 is quite a bit more expensive on the FanDuel side than he is respectively over on the DraftKings side. But at the same time, Stephon Diggs is the exact same price on both sites at $8,000. So you kind of balance it out a little bit there. Jimmy Garoppolo just again. Now, Jacobs, although $7,500 is a little bit better price on FanDuel than it is on DraftKings. And then James Cook, $6,600, very much in play once again. Moving down to the Bills wide receivers, still very much like Stephon Diggs, still like Gabe Davis. We could probably get to Hunter Renfrow at $5,100 over here as well if you really want to take that shot. But, on the FanDuel side, it's half point PPR, so you're not getting the full point PPR, which is something that helps Hunter Renfrow out a little bit more. He's probably not going to score quite as many touchdowns. For the Bills, Dalton Kincaid looks a little bit better than Dawson Knox at $52. If you want to take a shot on one of those Raiders tight ends, Michael Mayer or Austin Hooper, they're still very much in play as kind of punt plays. And then for the defenses, probably get to the Bills, not getting to the Raiders if you want to get there, but still probably underweight to the Bills overall. For the Packers and the Falcons, still really not interested in the quarterback position. I'm going to say that right off the bat. Desmond Ridder is only $6,500 though, but I think he doesn't really have too much of an upside unless you get like a lucky 3-touchdown game. Bijan Robinson is only $200 more than he is on DraftKings, so that could be a little bit more plays. He's all right, but $7,600 is a little bit more than I want to spend for him. Algier is a little bit too expensive for me personally, and not really getting AJ Dillon even if Aaron Jones plays. Christian Watson probably not playing with that hamstring injury. Romeo Doubs still probably a little bit limited with that hamstring injury though. Drake London, don't like the matchup. So really not getting to any of the wide receivers here this week for the Packers and the Falcons, excuse me. Kyle Pitts is okay at $5,700. Ultimately, you're wishing that he scores the touchdown. Luke Musgrave is kind of a punt play tight end, could make some sense at $5,000. But mainly, once again, we're getting to the defenses in this matchup, $4,200, $4,000. That would be primarily where I'm targeting in this game overall. And then we're going to move over to the Bears and the Buccaneers. And, like I said, you could probably I think it feels not the greatest matchup for him. $8,000 is a little more like you really want to take like a shot on Roshan Johnson. $4,600 is a decent punt down play on the FanDuel side. Decent punt play, not punt down, pay down or punt. Not really getting to Mike Evans this week against Jalen Johnson, but Chris Godwin, like I said, on the DraftKings side, on FanDuel, it's the same story, $6,300. You really like getting to him. You can take some shots on DJ Moore here and there if you really want to. Darnell Mooney is my favorite Bears wide receiver this week. And comparatively on the fan, as a punt down play or as a punt play, K-Dot looks all right, but not really getting to Cole Kmet, not getting too much K-Dot. Do like both these defenses quite a bit once again, and I don't mind either one. Probably be overweight to the field on both of them once again. For Kansas City and Jacksonville, we'll get to some Patrick Mahomes, $9,000, a little bit more than I like to pay. I think there's other quarterback directions that I will be going, whether it's paying $200 more for Josh Allen or just going to Lamar Jackson at $7,600. Trevor Lawrence, not in a bad spot at $7,800. Will be kind of a mid-range guy. Fill him in there if you want to. Not paying $8,200 for Travis Etienne. We're not playing the Kansas City running backs at this point in time. Tank Bigsby would be like a dart throw if you really wanted to get there, but I don't think you have to do it this week. For the wide receivers, Calvin Ridley's all the way up to $8,300. It's a lot of money for him. I don't love it for this matchup. Zay Flowers is $6,300, so that's more than I like to pay as well on the FanDuel side. If you want to take a shot on one of the Kansas City wide receivers, maybe Sky Moore at $5,200. Hope it pays off this week, but not really getting too much overall. Play Travis Kelce if he ends up playing. $8,500 looks pretty decent compared to, some of the other tight ends. And then Evan Ingram at $6,000 is very much in play once again. Not really getting to either one of those defenses, though. We'll get over to the Chargers and the Titans. Probably going to be a pretty similar story to what we already talked about, though, on the DraftKings side. So Justin Herbert, I think there's advantages to be had in this matchup. $8,200, a little bit more than I like to pay for him this week personally, but I still like the potential that could be there. Apparently, all the Tennessee quarterbacks are the same price. Ryan Tannehill, $6,400, and so is Will Levis and Malik Willis. That's kind of weird. But we get over the running back. Probably looks like Austin Eckler's not playing. So we're going to see a lot of chalk going to Joshua Kelly again, $6,300. If you want to take advantage of it, probably FanDuel is the better spot to do it than DraftKings. But like I said, if you really want kind of your punt play there, you could look at Elijah Dotson. Hopefully you get some pass catching work. That's probably a little bit better punt play on DraftKings, though, since you get the full point PPR. Do like Derrick Henry quite a bit going against against the Chargers defense. Once again, playing probably a third string backer next to Kenneth Murray, who's not good against stopping the run either. Wide receiver, I don't mind Keenan Allen. It's still a little bit expensive, though. DeAndre Hopkins, if he plays, is a way to get some ownership. Mike Williams, I don't hate, but it's still a little bit more than I like to pay for him. Treylon Burks, kind of the pump play if you want to go there, but not really getting there too much. Once again, at tight end, I like Chigakonkwo once again this week. He's only $4,700. That's a really good price on FanDuel, especially if DeAndre Hopkins misses. And then Gerald Everett, I don't mind getting two at $5,500. Maybe a little bit rich for him, but still pretty good matchup. For the defenses, not really getting either one once again. If I had to get to one, it'd probably be the Chargers, but I still have very big concerns for Derrick Henry. We get over to the Colts and the Texans once again. So Anthony Richard offers that rushing upside of $7,500. Already talked about CJ a little bit banged up with that shoulder injury. We'll see if he plays or not. If he doesn't play, Davis Mills plays, and the Colts defense looks even better. For the running back position, Zach Moss, I don't mind at $6,100 if we find out he's the starting running back for them this week and getting the bulk load. Damian Pierce, I don't mind at $6,000. If you really want to get a little bit different, you could go to Deion Jackson. Hope Zach Moss is kind of limited. Wide receiver territory, here we got Michael Pittman, $7,200, way too much for me this week. Robert Woods, I don't mind at $5,800. Tank Dell, $4,800, still like him as a pump play on this FanDuel side as well. And then for tight end, Dalton Schultz, I don't mind playing $4,800. Pretty good price tag for him, if we're being completely honest. And defenses still like both them very much this week. I will be way overweight to the Texans defense this week at $3,400. They're one of the cheaper ones, and it is a pretty attractive matchup. Go over to the 49ers and the Rams. I like both quarterbacks once again. Not too much has changed here. Brock Purdy, $7,100. Matthew Stafford, $6,600. Stafford at $6,600 is almost disrespectful, especially after week number 1. Maybe they're giving the 49ers defense a little bit too much credit this week. McCaffrey still be probably overweight to the field on this week because I think there is some good value to pair alongside him. Although I do really like Derrick Henry and Saquon Barkley quite a bit on the FanDuel side as well. Kyron Williams, if you're playing one of the Rams running backs, probably going to be him, but he looks a little bit better in DraftKings with the full point PPR. For the wide receivers, Ayuk is all the way up $7,500. There's still opportunities for both these guys to pay off if you want to go that direction. Like I said, with the Rams wide receivers, you can play any of these three. I'm going to more Van Jefferson this week. Hopefully things kind of straighten out more to what we expected for week number 1. At tight end, I like both. Once again, George Kittle, favorable matchup. Tyler Higbee, volume should be there once again. And then defense, you could probably play either one if you really wanted to. Hopefully that the opposing team does make some mistakes and leads to some opportunities and some points in that direction. The Rams kind of as a punt play defense at $3,100. I don't hate that idea. For the Giants and the Cardinals, once again, Daniel Jones. Oh, so he was actually more expensive off FanDuel. I was thinking it was the other way around. So Daniel Jones, if you're going to play him, probably looks better in DraftKings, not as much on FanDuel, unless you're really trying to get different, because you could pay $100 more and just get to Lamar Jackson, which sounds a lot better. Let's see. Running back, Saquon Barkley, like I already mentioned, very much interested in him this week. Should be a pretty favorable matchup, not getting to James Conner. Wide receiver wise, not like a lot here. If you want to get to Isaiah Hodgins, if you want to get to Paris Campbell, Darius Slayton, you could do that. Michael Wilson's kind of a pump play once again at $4,600. Looks like a pretty decent value, especially if he ends up getting the ball. Deontay Banks a little bit banged up for the Giants as well at cornerback. Tight end, very much interested in Darren Waller once again at $6,600. If you really want to take a punt play on one of the Cardinals tight ends, you probably could do it, but I wouldn't recommend it. And then both defenses very much in play, but I'm very much more interested in that Giants defense. And then we get over to the Cowboys and the Jets once again. Going to be a pretty similar story to the DraftKings side. Dak Prescott, $7,400 is not the worst price tag. I don't love the matchup against the Jets. Zach Wilson, we're not getting to. I'm still not interested in Tony Pollard. He's $8,000. Just give me the Derrick Henry at $8,300. I'd take $300 off someone else and make it Derrick Henry. That's kind of my opinion this week. Not really trying to get to the Jets running backs at their price tags on FanDuel. CeeDee Lamb, still like his matchup quite a bit, especially he's still playing in the slot. Not really interested in Garrett Wilson. Brandon Cooks probably going to mess with that MCL sprain, so Michael Gallup does look a little bit more appealing this week. And then, if you really want to take that dart throw on like Jalen Tolbert or somebody, you could, but I'm not really getting there this week overall. At tight end, not getting into just tight ends. If you want to take the shot on Jake Ferguson, you could do it, but $5,000, not quite the pay down option that he is on the DraftKings side. Then we get over to the defenses. Still very much interested in the Cowboys defense. They're probably going to be one of the chalkiest defenses overall this week, and they aren't the most expensive at $4,500. And even then, you could use the Jets as a pump play or like a contrarian defense at $3,700. Dak Prescott still had a lot of interceptions last year, a lot of turnovers in his career. So there is opportunities to be had there at that. And then last but not least, for the FanDuel side, we're getting over to the Broncos and the Washington Commanders. Not really interested in either quarterback in this matchup. Sam Howell would be my favorite at $6,900 if I had to pick one. Javonte Williams, I still don't mind at $6,400. Brian Robinson, probably not getting to at $6,500 though. In terms of wide receivers, not really interested in Sutton or Judy. If you really want to make a shot for McLaurin or Dotson, you could probably do it, but that's where we're going to cut the line off at. Tight ends, Logan Thomas, $4,900, kind of a filler if you want to put him there. Troutman is a punt play at $4,600, does make a little bit of sense. And then we get over to the defenses. I'll play the Broncos defense. I'll play the Commanders defense a decent amount. So probably a little bit overweight to the field. But that's kind of where I'm at in terms of NFL DFS. The quickest rundown I can do for both sides still ends up being about 40 minutes. But do definitely appreciate each and every one you tune in, whether you're watching live or on replay. Hopefully you found this video informative. If there's things you'd like to see in future weeks, be sure to drop them down in the comments, and I will take that feedback and try to make it happen as well. But with that being said, if you were joining me for the very first time or have yet to subscribe, please consider doing so. Definitely would appreciate it. Helps to build the community that we're trying to build here at Coach Craig Sports, which is one that's truly for you, the viewers, helping you with your DFS. Right now, it's MLB DFS Monday through Friday. We got CFL DFS once a week, and then right now we got the NFL DFS coming up with this video with the main slate breakdown. So hopefully you guys all enjoyed. Once again, be sure to check out the cheat sheet over at the Sports Affiliation website. And it's 100% free, helps you guys out a little bit there. And then if you're interested in a bigger player pool, be sure to check out my Patreon at patreon.com/CoachCraigSport. And then you get access to that every week as well. And then if you guys have any other additional questions, feel free to drop them down in the comments or message me on Twitter at Coach Craig Sport. Be more than happy to help you as quickly as possible. But with that being said, that's all that I truly have at this point in time. Do definitely appreciate each and every one of you tuning in, whether you're watching live or on replay. Definitely means a lot to me. I hope that each and every one of you have a great rest of your day and some pretty good luck in NFL DFS this weekend.